Hello everyone. In this short SPSS tutorial, I will show you how to make simple graphs in SPSS. To get started, we will open the folder that contains our dataset. So once you have, we are here in the folder, so I've put my data files in a folder called SPSS demo, and the data files are in text form. So we'll choose text data. We'll look at the cloud seeding data. So when you import data into SPSS, it will prompt you for these following steps. Normally, you will just have to click continue. But basically, this is just instructions on how to partition the data in your text file into the SPSS Excel spreadsheet, sorry. So we just continue. Just click continue. So the most important part seems to be the delimiters. So it's tab delimited. Continue. And then you are done. Okay. So the data have been imported into SPSS spreadsheet. So this data set is actually a real data set containing observations on the outcome of cloud seeding using sodium iodide. And the measured outcome is the rain volume obtained at a location where seeding was done. And of course, there is a control experiment where seeding was not done. Now, in order to use this data set for making plots, we have to restructure this data set. So to do this, click on data and look for the option restructure. Save the changes. Call this the demo. So we restructure the selected variables into cases. The first option, continue, continue. And then the variables to be transposed, you will use both unseeded and seeded. Continue. How many index variables do you want to create? Only one. Since we only have a single factor, which is either seeded or unseeded, those are the two levels of the factor. Continue. The index values, we will use the term here, unseeded or seeded. Then we just continue and press done. So what happens is that the data has been restructured into the following form, where the observation is actually given a label. Okay, this is the required format to make box plots or histograms in SPSS. So you can click on the data here. You click on this, it contains some information about this data set. This is a scale measurement. These are the names. So the name of the variable, so maybe we change it to something else. Let's put cloud, sorry, rain volume. And then that's it. You can switch back to the data view. Okay, so then let's go to graphs. Okay, so there are two ways to build graphs in the latest version of SPSS. The legacy dialogues allow you to use controls that you might be familiar in previous versions of SPSS. whereas the new chart builder provides some new controls on how to build the charts. So let's try out the chart builder first. So we want to make a box plot, so we scan the options here. The box plot is here. So there are some icons that come out, so we want to make multiple box plots, okay, in a single graph. Okay, so we click on this and drag, put it into this box. We just wait for a while for it to load. Okay, there seems to be some problem. Doesn't seem to work. Okay, now it's working. Okay, so on the x-axis, that's where our response variable, those are the groups, right? So that's the index. So we drag the group labels here. And then the rain volume will be the response. So we put it on the y-axis. And click OK. So then SPSS produces the box plot as follows. So as you can see, these are the outliers. The number indicates the ID of the data points. So in this box plot visualization, you can see that the clouds that are seeded tend to produce, in general, the median rain volume is higher than the unseeded clouds. And then in fact, some of the clouds that are seeded produce a lot of rain, as indicated by these outliers. Right. So you could edit the content of this the image. You can edit it. For example, we can change over here, instead of using index 1, you would say treatment. And if you don't like this description, you could is there a way to change it? Yes, you can. Maybe if you don't want anything, you just remove it. That will work, right? Okay. So this chart, you could copy this chart and then paste it into some kind of Word file, or you could choose to save it. Right? So this file, you can export the chart. Okay, save the chart template. Okay. Now let's close this. Okay. So now we will make another plot, which is the histogram. So here I will show how to use the legacy dialogs for the histogram. So the variable is the rain volume, and then since we want to display the two distributions of the rain volume by row, so that the comparison is easy to make, so we insert the index 1 over here as the rows, the panels. You can see that the two histograms have been constructed. You can double click on the image to edit titles for clarity. So as you can see here, the visualization shows very clearly that with the seeded clouds, you tend to get more rain volume. Okay. Now, if you want to just get some summary statistics, you could um, look at some descriptive statistics. Descriptives, look at the rain volume. Okay. So these are the descriptive statistics for the overall rain volume using by disregarding the labels. The minimum is 1, the maximum is 2,745.6 with the mean of this. Of course, you could find descriptives for, let's look at options. These are the other things that you can ask it to display. Standard deviation, range. Okay. So if you have the data in the original, original structure, let's go back to the data in the original structure. See without transformation. Okay, it's here. So you could look at the descriptive statistics for both the seeded and the unseeded. Click OK, and then you will get the descriptive statistics for both groups. And as you can see from here, the mean of the seeded clouds, the mean of the rain volume for the seeded clouds is 441 compared to the unseeded clouds, which is 164, about close to 3 times higher. So a preliminary analysis of the cloud seeding data gives you some idea about whether it already tells you that cloud seeding should result in significantly higher mean rain volume when you go on to perform some statistical inference, such as using a t-test. So here we can actually use a t-test to continue. So for that, we can look at the t-test. So there are lots of statistical tests around here. Tables, plots, graphs. Okay, so let's look at the function to perform a t-test. Comparing means, right? So we're looking at two sample t-test, independent samples t-test. So we have the test variables unseeded and seeded. Um, you probably need to use the restructured data. Let's take a look at the restructured data, which is here. Okay, let's look at the restructured data, and we work on this data. Analyze, comparing the means. The test variable will be the rain volume, and the grouping variable would be the index. Okay. We define the groups. Group 1 being the seeded, group 2 unseeded. Continue. Right? So you need to define the indices here. Panel, click OK. And then there you go, you have your independent samples test. This is very formal. So SPSS does the two sample t-test by assuming equal variance assumption, and also the other case of not assuming equal variance assumption. Actually, this is not really necessary because you just go ahead and not assume the variances are equal. As you can see, the results of this two variants of the t-test are almost the same. Right, so the p-value is marginal at 5%, right? But then if you look at the mean difference, it's actually quite substantial, around 277. Okay, so in this case, we would say that the result of the two sample t-test is marginally significant. If you have a larger data set, you might be able to reject the null hypothesis with a much smaller p-value. Okay, so this concludes the introduction on using how to use SPSS to do basic data exploration, and also to do a simple comparison of means test using the two sample t-test.